So I've been looking at Will Smith's hands, and it's only since looking at them that I've started to think twice about the whole slapping thing, slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars, which is interesting because the palms never lie. And the second thing that I'm going to get to the bottom of at the end of this video is the length of Will Smith's life itself. I've got a good idea as to how long he's going to live for. I'm not going to be specific about it, but it is noteworthy. So there's a couple of things. I mean, obviously this is an oldish image here, but it's a good, clear one, really, as far as online images go of celebrities. And the first thing, really just about the shape of the palm and the fingers. Will is a fire hand. I mean, only just short fingers. These fingers are nearly on the long side. They're long for a fire hand, which adds to the complexity of his nature because he's like a fire, but then there's a bit of water there as well. He's very artistic, very sensitive. Will Smith has the hands of an artist and a communicator, which kind of seems obvious being that he's an actor, but not all actors have this kind of this complexity. And the interesting things I've noticed about the shape of the fingers, so the fingertips themselves. I mean, Apollo is very sort of spatulate, and that kind of shows that there's a very sort of practical side to his creativity, that he appreciates a finished effort, that he doesn't like loose ends, that he's likes a tangible result at the end of efforts. And so films are kind of artistic in the sense that there's nothing really to grasp onto physically, tactile. So that's an odd thing there. So I imagine that he has actually some sort of hobby where there's a physical kind of tactile craftsman type result at the end of it. He's not just an artist in the sense of just being purely creative and playing roles. There's more to his creativity than that. So I imagine he has some sort of hobby with physical end results at the end of it all. The other thing, is, and this is classic, the Jupiter finger's short, it's a bit stumpy, and the width of the basal phalanx is wide. So, we have the classic signs here, telltale signs of an inferiority complex. Confidence is not the same as self-esteem. And A-list actors prove this time and time again with their actions and with their palms. Now, the fate line here, it stems from real low down in the heel of the lunar there, and that in Tibetan palmistry, you probably heard me say this if you watched any of my other videos, a lot of my other videos, I always mention it. This sign is showing someone who has come back from a past life to finish uncompleted business from a life before. And at the very least, it shows someone who's highly ambitious, which is also shown by the headline, which, well, that's a terrible example. The headline here, it crosses over the lifeline. The lifeline also starts up on Jupiter, and they both start high, and this is that need to rise high in life, high ambition, highly independent as well. And that's also shown by just how early on in life Will's lifeline breaks away from that headline. And I mean like 15. That's really young. This person was highly motivated, highly independent. Nothing's going to stop this person. And so that kind of coincides with what we see here with the fate line. Now, interestingly, the fate line, or career line, as it's often known as, stops before it reaches the heart line. So it's stopping like late 40s, which is interesting. I mean, maybe it's not stopping, maybe it's just the clarity of this image. And also, this is not a new image, this is not an up-to-date image, this is the clearest image I have. So it'd be nice to see a more up-to-date picture, and perhaps it stretches a little bit further. But it's interesting that it kind of stops here, and there's this almost like this obstacle, this horizontal, this transverse sort of blockage. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not really. It's just a coincidental convergence of lines, because the heart line branches upwards like this, the low starting heart line, which shows, this is a person who's inspired by strong moral stories, and the way this heart line rises up like this, that was a bad example. It shows as someone who is aroused by physical, visual stimuli, which also this well-developed um, first phalanx of Apollo, and this little kink here in the second knot of Mercury also shows us that Will is for all intents and purposes, a red-blooded male, and he's healthy in that respect. But what I think this means is, it really does sort of show the way it stops dead like this, or at least it doesn't carry on with as much gusto, is that there's Will's luck has run out, and that's also evident by this Mars line, which is strong until the age of around 50, and that's sort of similar to what we're seeing here, late 40s. So it's almost as like, this Mars line here, it's really useful for when we're fighting legal battles, for when we're fighting literal physical battles. It's Mars, it's the god of war. It's really useful for when we're fighting off illnesses as well. It helps us, in assisting our immune system. And it's interesting that this line seems to kind of fade out. It sort of peters out at a similar time as his career. So, I mean, I'm not sure what kind of conclusion you can draw from that, but it sort of seems like his luck has run out. And on the subject of luck, this Mercury line here, it's known as, Beryl Hutchinson called this line the headline of the subconscious. And this is a powerful Mercury line. It really does. I mean, the curve of it, where it begins and where it ends, it really is suggesting high intuition, high instincts, highly instinctive person. So with the combination of, we've got 1, 2 conic, the thumb is in between conic and square, and then we've kind of got, a spatulate and, a bit of a stumpy Jupiter. So we have there's a few things going on here in terms of mental outlook and his approach to different situations. There's an enthusiastic and intuitive, instinctive, quick thinking, responsive type approach to communication and to decision making, but where and work as well, I suppose. There's keen instincts with which roles to take, but when it comes to his talents, this aspect of his nature is completely set aside, because he's very much someone who thinks things very deeply, thinks things through when it comes to um, what could be. The creative side to his nature is deep, and that's also shown by this. This is a fantastic curve here. That's a highly creative individual, and the fact that his headline begins to double. Um, hmm, I'm going back on my word here. I'm not entirely convinced that's a doubling of the headline. This could be because of how the origins of a line are where it's at its strongest, and here it looks like it's actually coming from this way. So this looks like a double career line, double fate line. So we've got a secondary career that doesn't last as long. So from around late teens, early 20s, up to late 20s, we've got a career here it's strong while it lasts, but it's not as strong, and it's more more around music. This is a more of a musical area of Luna in general. So that all makes complete sense. Obviously, we know he was a rapper for some time, but the majority of his career has been around acting. What I find interesting about his primary career line is that it doesn't actually start like up here, like you would expect someone to have a career with an audience, or to desire a career with an audience. And this is because I feel, a career line that stems like down here like this shows someone who wants to work with others, for others, in a way that impacts and inspires others. This is someone who has a powerful message to give and wants to be more than just a performer. This is someone who wants to inspire. And this is also evident by this low set heart line. This is someone who's inspired himself by powerful uh, moral stories of ethics. And so he wants to, pass on what he is inspired by. Now, I'm not sure if I've already mentioned this, but the overall shape of this hand, it's a powerful hand. I mean, it's a good width. It's just a bit longer than it is wide. And it almost looks as though the width, the size of the hand is a bit too large for the fingers, and that shows someone with immense energy and a great amount to give. And it's sort of like there's the it's a bottle of champagne that's been shaken up and he's ready to explode. And I don't mean that in any sort of um, unhealthy way necessarily. Normally, this is seen with people with a great amount of enthusiasm and a great amount of ideas and creativity. And this is seen, I've seen it in one of my best friends, Palms, who's highly creative, highly gifted, highly talented, has a lot to do, a lot to say, a lot to give, a lot to achieve. A big achiever, that's the word I'm looking for here. And it's also seen in Michael Jackson's palm as well. He's got this palm that's kind of, it's way too big for the fingers. I mean, it's not, this palm isn't overly big for the fingers, but it is just something that I wanted to kind of correlate there and find a correlation as I was talking. Um, but, in respect to Will Smith's nature, so I'm going to start hitting on what I think about the whole Chris Rock um, shenanigan. So the thumb tells us a great deal about a personality, a great deal about the overall characteristics of a person, their outlook, their temperament. It's like the thumb kind of summarizes a person. It's like all of the fingers, all four fingers combined. It'll show you so much information about a person. Unfortunately, almost all of the images I receive are kind of this angle, side on. I never get to see the thumb fingerprint. I never get to see, um, the dimensions, the width of the second and first phalanx. It's frustrating. But at the same time, I also don't pay too much or not enough attention to the thumb. So that's something I'm going to work on as a palmist. I'm going to better myself over the next year. I'm going to really focus on learning more about thumbs because there's just so much to say there. But Will Smith's thumb does not strike me as a person who has anger issues, nor does the life and the headline suggest any of this kind of nature. The heartline either. There's nothing out of place here that kind of strikes me as someone that has that kind of tendency to lash out, to act without thinking, or have any kind of explosive anger issues. I don't see that in this palm so much. I mean, there is this is a well-developed um, inner Mars, sure, but it's not an out of control one. This is someone who's got great drive and motivation, but this is under control. The thumb keeps it under control, and I'll show you in another image. So this is a much more up-to-date one, and you can see here that the thumb, it's not sort of wasted. I mean, it pinches in ever so slightly in a healthy manner. This shows diplomacy, which is not the kind of word you would associate with someone flying off the handle. The first phalanx of the thumb, it's actually a lot shorter than the second. You can see it best in this image here. Okay, so maybe not a lot shorter, but I mean, it could be as far as up to here, but it's even. This is good. And particularly what you don't see here is a thumb that's explosive. It's not like this is a well-measured temperament. This is someone that's got a handle on his emotions. You know, if you were to see a clubbed thumb like this, what's known as a murderer's thumb in medieval palmistry, which is a ridiculous notion because you couldn't, you know, spot a murderer just by looking at the thumb alone. But murderers typically have a clubbed thumb because they don't have an ability, or at least a large majority of them in the medieval period that were, you know, assessed by palmists of that era were, you know, they had this kind of explosive thumb, and that's, you know, like I was saying before about being shaken up. And this is what this kind of thumb suggests, and you know, the thumb that Will Smith had, this is a well-measured, calm, responsible, reasonable temperament. This is someone who's got a good amount of logic in comparison to willpower. This is an ideas person. This is not someone who is all action and no thought. And that's what the thumb shows us. It shows us that when someone has longer logic than willpower, it shows us that someone has more, someone is better with their head than their hands. When it's the other way around, they manipulate their environment using force. They're laborers, you know, they're fighters, they are military men, you know, they are athletes, they're physical beings. They're better with their hands than their head. Now, Will is measured. He's a really good degree of both, but ever so slightly more logic than willpower. And this shows us someone. He's an ideas person, and this is going back to what I was saying about his creative. He's highly analytical when it comes to creative endeavors, but with other aspects of his daily life and making choices, he's highly instinctive, you know, really instinctive, to the point where actually there might even be some, you know, some real intuition here. And I don't mean just in business, because if you look just under Jupiter, you can quite clearly see a well-defined Solomon's ring here. And so he has an interest in the occult. He's a wise individual, and he's using this wisdom, this intuitive, intuitive wisdom, sensitivity, sympathy, insight, and he's utilizing this wisdom, this emotional intelligence, and incorporating it into his work. So, coming full circle now with the thumb, I don't believe that this whole incident at the Oscars slapping Chris Rock was genuine. I actually think that was an act. I think there was something else going on there. I don't think it's real. I just don't believe it. I mean, not that it's not possible. This just does not strike me as the kind of, pun unintended, but still valuable. It does not strike me as the kind of person that would act so impulsively. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's where I'm struggling with this. Just doesn't make sense to me. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention about Will Smith's life, because I'm going to end the video pretty soon, his life expectancy. I believe Will Smith will live until a very old age. The resets along the wrist here, Will actually has 4 of them. And going back to medieval palmistry, it's said that each one of these represents 25 years of the life. I don't necessarily believe that, especially if this unconscious headline is any sort of indicator as to the length, which is not always at all, of a person's life, I think this person will live, up into a ripe old age. I mean, like, old. So I'm not going to put a number to it. I'll just let you have a think on that. So let me know your thoughts on this video. I mean, I've said some good things here, and I can say plenty of bad things here, but I don't really want to. I mean, this inferiority complex, it's so commonly compensated for by sex and drugs, womanizing, and this escapism from this feeling that every achievement is never quite enough. But unfortunately for Will, it seems like his luck has kind of run out. I could be wrong about that, and I hope I am. There we go. So let me know your thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed this week's reading, and let me know who you'd like me to read for next week's case study, and I'll see you on the next one.